Or here's one that might shock you. I found Toyotas that I would never buy. Believe it or not, Toyota used to make motorcycles from 1949 to 1960 for the Japanese market. It might be a reflection of what's happening with Toyota today. So one should always learn from the past. Turns out that Toyo Motors made motorcycles, but they got the parts from all over the place, and they merely put them together themselves. And they were cheaply made little machines that by 1960 were no longer in production. They stopped making them. Of course, you're talking about Honda motorcycles and their Super Cub. They, totally surpassed what those people were doing. Turns out that partner, Mr. Toyota, he was the one more behind it. They called it Toyo Motors, which was a subsidiary of Toyota. I gotta tell you, it's one Toyota that I would never want. Very bad reputations. They were cheaply made, but these Toyo motorcycles, they were sold in the Toyota showrooms along with the cars. So I guess when I tell people, gee, I wish Toyota made motorcycles, I'd certainly buy one. Well, back in the day, I wouldn't have, because they weren't that well made. Of course, at the time, even 1960, I was only 7 years old, so I don't think I was going to be buying any motorcycle. So even though they built them together, they got parts from all over the place, and like I said, they went out of business in 1960, and it's more than coincidence that Honda in 1958 introduced the Super Cub, which made a lot of money off of those small little motorcycles and then ramped up to the mega screaming motorcycles that Honda makes today. It's probably a smart move for Toyota to get out of the motorcycle business and concentrate on the car business. Because Honda, of course, went into the car business too, but still, Toyota is much bigger than Honda when it comes to cars. But you can't really blame Toyota, because back in those days, there were over 100 companies in Japan that made motorcycles. So everything was up for grabs. The good ones, hey, they're out there now. Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki. And the bad ones, well, they're just part of history, like the Toyo motorcycle that even I've never actually seen one in the flesh. I'd like to see one, though. It'd be kind of interesting. Here we go, another dead Italian car. The Fiat 124 Spider is dead yet again. Now, it's only been sale in the United States since 2017, and it's dead again. Not bad looking, the Fiat 124 Spiders. They are decent looking vehicles, but of course they were made like garbage, and they had horrendous sales in the United States. So it's no surprise that they're not going to be making them anymore. And also the Fiat 500L, they're getting rid of that too. And I say good riddance. In the United States, the only thing that leaves is you can't get the Fiat 500s, but you can get the Jeep Renegades, which are basically four-wheel drive Fiat 500s. And as I've said, they're not that well made anyway. Sports cars are dying breed, especially small ones to begin with. When you're competing with the likes of Mazda, Miata that sold over 1 million, they're very dependable, fun little cars. Italians just couldn't compete with them. They can't. They tried to come back. Wouldn't surprise me if they pull all the Fiat brands out of the United States eventually, because they had such horrid sales. They pulled out decades ago. They came back when Fiat bought Chrysler. They should have stayed in Italy and not come overseas, because, as everyone can see, they're a massive failure. I had customers buy them. They were massive piles of junk. I'd see the engines blow up with 20,000 miles on them. Horrible cars. Good thing they don't make them. They look beautiful. I mean, you get your last chance, go buy one now and park it in your front yard. Makes a nice lawn ornament. That Ray Delanta says, I have a 2017 Hyundai Elantra with 110,000 kilometers, so that's what, like 60,000 miles. I hear this noise when I start it up. He's got a video. Now listen to the noise. The engine's rattling away. This is why I tell people not to buy Hyundais. Everybody says, oh, they're better than they used to be. Some are, some aren't. They've always had engine problems. It's got an engine problem, you got 60,000 miles. Unheard of with a Toyota or a Honda, any well-built vehicle. Their factories, they don't have the quality control. The equipment must have problems. Lots of Kias and Hyundais realize they're pretty much the same company. They own parts of each other. They've had engine problems from building them wrong, metal flicks, all kinds of stuff. Take Scotty's advice, don't buy one. Now, yours is making noise. With that small amount of mileage, take it to a dealer. See if there's any kind of warranty. If there isn't, my advice would be warm it up and trade it in on something else if you can get any money for it, because eventually you're going to have to do serious, expensive engine work on that thing. From the rattling noise that it makes when you start it up. No engine should make rattling noises when it's running, when it starts up. Sure, they go away when it's warmed up, but that's because they're just worn a little now. Eventually, even when it's warm, it'll make noise and it'll cost you a fortune to fix. That's why I say, don't buy those cars. Quality just isn't there. Gits Jojo says, I got an 02 Ford Ranger 3-liter, 210,000 miles. The overflow tank is empty after 2 to 3 weeks, but the radiator's full. What do you think it is? All right, check the overflow tank. Maybe it's cracked. It's 19 years old. Replace it if it's cracked. But if it keeps going empty, it's called an overflow tank for a reason. It takes the overflow when the radiator gets hot, it expands and it sends coolant into the overflow tank, and then when it cools down, it sucks it back in. If it keeps empty, you have a problem. Watch my video, How to Fix an Overheating Car Engine, Scotty. You can find anything that could possibly be. Now, you might say, well, it's not overheating. Well, if you didn't keep adding the coolant, it would overheat because eventually it will get low on coolant in the radiator too. So, do check that. And also do a simple thing. Check the hose between the overflow tank and the radiator. If it's loose or cracked, put little clamps and replace it so it doesn't get loose and it doesn't go out that way. But there is a problem somewhere. Well, the courts have spoken. They reversed their decision. It turns out that Indian company Mahindra now has the green light to manufacture and sell its 2021 Roxor in the United States. It looks just like an old Jeep. And previously they had said, you can't. You ripped off Jeep. Well, now the court says the new design no longer infringes on Jeep's trademark, and so they can sell in the United States. Well, if you look at them, they sure look like old Jeeps to me. I mean, I can't really tell the difference. They look exactly the same. Now, the Roxor UTV, originally, they said it was just too much copying of Jeep, but now they've changed their mind. I guess, what do they say? Beauty's in the eye of the beholder? I guess copying is in the eye of the beholder, too. Now, the International Trade Commission has said that it does not infringe on what they call the Jeep trade dress. That's not copying it exactly. Still looks the same to me. I don't see it looking any different. Back in the 1940s, the Indian company Mahindra got the license to build just like the Willys old CJ in those days. That's why they look similar. They had the right to do it from Willys CJ way back in the 1940s. Now, one of the ways they got out with it was they said that it's not a direct competitor to Jeep in the U.S. because they're marketing the Mahindra Roxor as only an off-road, not legal for road use. So the court battle goes on. To me, they look exactly the same as they did before. Who's to say what is what, but they sure look like Jeeps to me, but I mean, really? I don't know. With the quality of Fiat, Chrysler, and maybe the Indians are making them better. I don't know. I've never actually worked on one, so I can't say what quality they have. Maybe they're better made. Pepper says, I got an 05 3.5 Impala with an intermittent PO172, and I can't find any vacuum leaks. Okay, that means it's running lean. You know, we're going to make sure you don't have any vacuum leaks anywhere. They can hide all over the place. The intake manifolds on those are notorious for leaking, kind of hard to find out. But if you really don't have any vacuum leaks, that can be as simple as a clogged fuel filter or a weak fuel pump. Now, you can pressure test the fuel pump, but you're better to change the fuel filter first, because if your fuel filter's clogged, you're testing the pressure after the fuel filter. So it might say the pressure's low, but it might be low because the fuel filter's clogged. So first change the fuel filter. If that fixes it, voila, solved your whole problem. If not, then pressure test the fuel pump. And if it's low fuel pressure makes it run lean because you don't get enough fuel with enough pressure to spray correctly. And it won't spray enough fuel, so it will run too lean. Not enough fuel, too much air. You can run lean because you got too much air, but also if you have too little fuel. Always realize that. Just like a misfire in a car, you can get a misfire because the spark plug isn't firing right. But if a fuel injector isn't spraying right, you can also get a misfire. And you might think, misfire, that's ignition. No. Things are more complex than you think. You always have to think logically and learn what parts go bad most commonly and check them first. Well, you might not know it, but you can now get motorcycle gear that has airbags built in. I recently was watching a Ducati advertisement, and they call it Ducati Smart Jacket with airbag system. Of course, it was Italian, all sophisticated. They showed the guy riding on his motorcycle. But interestingly enough, they did not show it actually deploying. I'm guessing that since it's an Italian company, they were worried that the thing wouldn't work. And so they didn't dare try it out for the video. Who knows, right? For you motorcycle riders, there are actually a whole bunch of airbag systems out there, so that if you get in a wreck, instead of being crunched, it blows up and protects your vital organs inside, and you kind of bounce around a little. Now they go anywhere from like $500, the basic ones, to $1,400 that racing guys will wear. The racing ones have GPS sensors and everything, and they can even be set up for a track so they know how much G and how much turning is on each turn, and if the guy goes too far and he's going to fall over, it pops before he crashes the vehicle. Realize the cheaper ones, like you buy a $400 one, the cheaper ones are like a old-fashioned parachute. They got a ripcord. You got to pull it to make it go. Well, let's say if you're crashing and flying through the air, you might not think that it's time to pull it yourself. It would probably be better to buy the $1,000 plus one that will save your life better. Because consider, my son had to ride an ambulance the other day. It cost him $2,000 for one ambulance ride. So what the heck? If you buy a $1,200 airbag smart vest for your motorcycle riding, it's a lot cheaper than even one ride in an ambulance. And all the pain that's ensued, I think it's worth spending that kind of money if you're worried to get one of these fancy airbag systems that senses what's happening, that will deploy itself so you don't have to think, up flying through the air, got to pull that ripcord. Everybody knows you get in an accident, you don't have enough time to react, especially if you're rear-ended in a motorcycle. You're going to boop, you're going to have time to react, you might be knocked out. So better to buy the more expensive one. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.